Hi guys, I'm Uncle Loco, Tahm Kench One Trick, doing something a little bit differently. We're doing a Kennen matchup tier list. We're doing a tier list to show the easiest matchups, even matchups, and hardest matchups for Kennen. Not taking this too seriously, just trying to give you like a general idea of what matchups are good, what matchups are bad for Kennen in Season 11. This is just my perspective. People of all ranks will have their different view on it, but this is what I personally think about Kennen's matchups. Starting from Aatrox all the way down to Yone. These are all the top laners you're going to be seeing. I'm only going to be doing matchups that I've played more than a few times. So if you've seen a Aphelios top or a Kassadin top, sorry, I won't be going over that. But with that, let's get into it. Firstly, I think Aatrox is an even matchup. Even matchup, you can take Conqueror, you can take Phaedra, Spellbook, all of them work. Pretty good farm lane, pretty easy to just scale up. Not really that much kill pressure on him. All you have to do is really scale up, play for your team, play for ganks, and you'll be fine. Watch out for his dash. Watch out for his Q. Don't get hit by the second one or else you're in big danger, but other than that, I think it's an easy matchup. Skill. The numbers mean if you play 10 matches, you will win 5 of them and you will lose 5 of them. That means it's an even matchup. This is a common format in fighting games, and it's what I'll be using today. Against Akali, I think Akali is a good matchup for Kennen. I think you can take Airy, you can take Electrocute. Really, really easy matchup. Max W, you can bully her. She can't run away from you with her Shroud. You have your ultimate for that. Pretty easy matchup. Next up, I think Camille is the epitome of skill matchups for Kennen. The better player will win this matchup every single time. Things you have to look out for are her W. If you get hit by that, she'll probably, likely, jump onto you. Gotta be careful. You can bait all of her abilities with your E. You have pretty good toolset to deal with her. You can scale up. You play for team fights better than her. The only thing you have to worry about is getting hit by her hook shot. Next up is Cho'Gath. I think it's a poor matchup. 4 out of 10 times, Kennen will win it. Pretty bad matchup. Cho'Gath outsustains you for the most part. Not really much agency in the lane. You're gonna farm up. You're gonna get harassed a little bit. Maybe you get dove. You can take Cole. You can take Doran's Blade, Doran's Shield. I think Phaedra is probably the best rune set against him. Farm lane, no kill pressure. Use your E to dodge his Q. You'll be fine. Next up is Darius. I think Darius, contrary to popular belief from both sides, I think is a fairly even matchup. Maybe slightly losing for Kennen just due to how easy Darius has it against him. Darius has one of the highest base health regens in the game, if not the highest. He'll outsustain all of your damage, and I mean all of it. Really hard to kill him ever solo. You need to play for your jungler, need to play for ganks, teleporting bot lane, stuff like that. Take phase rush, scale out the lane, don't die and you'll be fine. Next up is Mundo, same boat as Cho'Gath. He outsustains all of your damage. He rushes Merc Treads, MR, all of that. He goes Doran's Shield, Second Wind, outsustains all your damage. Really impossible to kill him 1v1. But overall, I think you can scale up the matchup as long as you play for your team, teleport bot lane, and stuff like that. Next up, we got Fiora. I think Fiora is... she's really hard to place, because it really depends on the Fiora player. Honestly, with her, it's pretty between these two tiers for me, because I don't think she's that hard, but in the hands of a really good Fiora player, it feels impossible. It really depends on the player. So maybe it's skill matchup, maybe it's slightly losing just due to how hard she wins the 1v1. I'll place her with Darius. She feels like slightly favored towards Fiora, just due to how much she can sustain, win 1v1s, and dive you. You have to play really safe around her parry. You cannot stun her unless she uses her parry, unless you are far out of range. Fiora is really, really difficult for Kennen, I feel, in the hands of a really good Fiora player. Alright, next up, I think GP, he's also with Fiora. In the hands of a good player, Gangplank's really hard to deal with, but overall, I don't think he's that hard. Not that difficult. Maybe he's with these guys. Maybe he's up here. I'll put him here for now. Just due to how much he shoves you in, he plays really safe. He'll farm grass procs off of you. Really, really toxic matchup, I feel. Early game, he can shove you in, recall for Sheen, and then you're just going to be eating 150 damage, 200 damage every single time he has Q up. Really, really difficult matchup, I feel, for Kennen. But you can play for bot lane. Really not difficult matchup, because the Gangplank can misplay it, and Kennen has a lot of ways to get in. Good trade or a good fight. Kennen has a few ways to deal with GP, just due to how much damage you can pump out on him. But overall, I feel like it's slightly GP favored, just due to how much he can farm Q and outfarm you, outscale you. Really hard to get a really good lead on him unless the Gangplank messes it up super heavily. Alright, next up we got Garen. Everyone hates playing against Garen, but I feel like it's a even or slightly losing matchup just due to his kill pressure on you level 6. Garen has flash, he has Q, R, ignite, he'll one-shot you no matter what, no matter where you're standing in the lane. Garen can one-shot you level 6. But he's one of the easiest scaling lanes for Kennen. You can take Cole, you can farm up, play for your team, play for your jungler, shove him in a little bit early. Overall, just play for your team against Garen, I feel like. Slightly losing, but I think Kennen can win it. You just gotta play for scaling. Alright, next up, Gnar. Gnar, I feel like is really one of Kennen's best matchups. One of, if not the best range matchup for Kennen. I put him up here with Akali. Just due to like how much more useful you are than Gnar. All he does is like bully lane against stuff like Aatrox, Darius, Garen. He bullies melees. He's not so good against Kennen. I feel like Kennen's actually a counter to Gnar in that sense. One of the only laners who can actually stand up to his early game harass. I'd say Conqueror is pretty good against him. You can go Conquer with Tenacity, because level 6, you'll be in a pretty bad spot if you don't have Tenacity, at least some form of Tenacity to deal with his ultimate. You can get pretty good early prio against him in lane. You can shove him in a little bit, harass him, max Q, you'll be fine. I think Gnar's a good matchup. This one I've played more than a few times, and I hate it. It's Gragas. I freaking hate playing against Gragas, man. His E has priority over yours. He out-sustains you. He out-trades you. He out-all-ins you. He can dive you. Very close to being one of Kennen's worst matchups in the hands of a good player. I'll put him here with these tanks. He's pretty toxic. If you ever played against a good Gragas, you'll know what I'm talking about. You can't take phase rush since his E out-prioritizes yours, meaning your E does not trade with his body slam. So phase rush is a no-go. Conqueror is fine, but you can't really have kill pressure on him. Maybe Spellbook is a good option against Gragas. Really what you're going to be doing against him is scaling up and getting shoved in. Next up is Gwen. I haven't played too much against Gwen, but from what I feel, it's a skill matchup. Maybe slightly favored towards Gwen, but I'll put it in skill matchup. For now, skill matchup. For now, I'll put Gwen here. I think it's pretty even. You can harass her early on, but you have to be careful about her dash. And then like when she has max stacks with her scissors, you can really deal some major damage to Kennen. But overall, I feel like it's even. You can scale up. You can bully her even. Pretty Kennen favored. It's maybe here. It's maybe a Kennen favored matchup, just slightly. Personally, I would take Conqueror into her, maybe Aerie. You can push her in early, get Prio, TP, bot, maybe get a early cheater. Easy to scale lane. I feel like you can take most any rune you want until players figure out Gwen a little bit more. Next up is Heimerdinger. If you played up against him, you feel helpless early game. Early game's a menace to play against Heimerdinger, but right when you hit level 6, if you have any form of AP, if you have like an alternator that you've got off of a recall and teleport back to lane, you can one-shot him pretty easily just with simple flash combo. If you hit 1Q, you're going to be able to kill him, but you will have to bleed CS early. You can take Doran's Shield. Electrocute and Area are both good runes against Heimerdinger, but early game will be difficult against him as he'll be getting shoved in really heavily. Alright, with Illaoi, I feel like she's in the same boat as Camille and Darius, and Kennen obviously, being one of Kennen's few true skill matchups just due to how she has to play it to win the lane and how Kennen has to play it to lose the lane, if that makes sense. Kennen has all the tools to deal with her, being range and having a movement speed and her resistances on his R, but if you get hit by your E, you're going to be in for a rough time, but Kennen has his E to counter hers. Pull, I don't know what it's called, the one that pulls out your soul. If you get hit by that, you're taking half your health bar. You're not happy. But I think early game, you can get good shove against her, good prio. You maybe cheater on her. You're going to be playing for bot lane, not much kill pressure against her. Maybe a bit if she messes up. But I feel like it is a skill matchup in every sense of the word. Alright, we all know where this one's going. Irelia is the worst matchup in the game for Kennen. We all know it. If you've played against Irelia, it feels hopeless if the Irelia player is any sort of good. She spams Q on the wave, out-sustains your entire health bar. She can auto you to death level 1 just by Qing onto you. You have to start E. You have to go Doran's Blade. Maybe Conqueror is good. Maybe Phase Rush is good. I've heard a few people take Electrocute, but I think it is absolutely the worst matchup in the game for Kennen. Due to her sustain and kill pressure, if she hits anything, she can even miss everything and one-shot Kennen. And I feel like it's one of Kennen's worst matchups in the game. Alright, up next, we got Jax. I feel like Jax is a favored matchup for Kennen. Every Jax main would agree with you. Kennen feels impossible to play against if you're the Jax player. Kennen has all the tools to deal with Jax. If he jumps on you, you just press EQW, run away, kite him. He's really sad. Really miserable matchup for Jax. You can take Conqueror or Phase Rush 1, either one of your choice. You can shove him in early, you can get a cheater recall, you can play for bot lane, and he's just going to have an unhappy time. Unless the Kennen somehow screws it up. Next one here, I'd say Jayce is in the Irelia tier if the Jayce is good. If the Jayce is good, you're going to be having a really rough time. Level 1, he can one-shot you. He can all-in you level 1 with his hammer stance. He Qs onto you. He autos you. He kites back. Then he turns range form and he Qs you again. And then you're 0 HP level 1. It's really insufferable to play as Kennen. Early Seekers and Dizoni's Rush will save you a lot of headache. I've even went Sunfire Cape into one, if you can believe that. I think it's a Spellbook lane. Spellbook or Phase Rush would be my two go-to runes against Jayce. Just do it if he gets onto you, you need to get out of there. You need to. He's gonna one-shot you if you don't get out of there. Spellbook's a little bit better for scaling up, a little bit better for having more agency in lane, not so much for scaling up. I think Phaedrus is good for scaling up against him, but you're going to be having a bad time if the Jayce is good. Next up, I'd put Kalista maybe in this middle tier here. We're slightly favored, maybe a little bit favored towards the Kalista, just due to how levels 1 through 5 will play out against Kennen. Kalista's going to shove you in, she's going to harass you, you're going to bleed CS, but it's a standard AD carry lane. Once you hit level 6, you press R, you press flash, and she's dead every time. Maybe just put her into the slightly hard tier of the tier list here, just due to how early levels can go. You'll get shoved in, maybe bleed some CS, maybe you're down 30 CS, level 6 even, if the Kalista player is really playing it well. But level 6, Kennen does what he always does best against squishies, and he R flashes, and she's dead. I'd take Electrocute or Phaedrus into her, personally. Phaedrus is my go-to. Just wait till level 6, farm it out, play for bot lane. You don't have to kill her in lane. You just have to not die. Up next, we have Karma, and I'd put her in the same tier, but for a lot of different reasons. Those reasons being, Karma is impossible to kill, and she will play super well with the team that can play around her, or that she can play around, rather. Something like an Olaf or something that wants to go in. Olaf, Urgot, Renekton, stuff like that. Anything she can support, any AD carry that wants to go in Kai'Sa, Samira, she can support her team really well. She'll outscale you, she harasses you in lane, she's impossible to kill. Really, really difficult matchup. It's either a spellbook or an airy lane for me, for the most part. It's really impossible to fight her. She'll shove you in, but you have to play for your team, and I think that's the win condition in that lane. Alright, next here we got Kayle. I think Kayle is a good matchup for Kennen. It's unlosable pre-6, absolutely unlosable. You cannot die to her. 1 through 5, you'll be fine. You can shove her in early, you can force her to recall. You have all the tools to deal with Kayle. You can take Phaedrus, you can take Electrocute, it's really up to you. All you have to really look out for is her ultimate. You have to not get baited. Same as what I'm going to talk about the Vladimir matchup in a bit, where you have to use your ultimate to stun her if she has her ultimate up, and just one-shot her in that time frame. You get 2 stacks on her, you press R, and you have to kill her in that time frame. But I think it's a really, really easy lane for Kennen. You can't really screw it up. It's really impossible to lose against Kayle. And Kled, I would also put in the same tier. Kled, I think, is unlosable for Kennen early game. If the Kennen plays it right, I think it's really, really Kennen favored. It's maybe even up here with just how many times I've played against Kled. It's really hard for Kennen to lose. You just have to dodge his bear trap, and he cannot win the trade. As long as you dodge bear trap or you run out of its range, he cannot win the trade. If he ever misses that or misses his dash, then he's free real estate. He has no sustain in lane. Kennen can take Conqueror. Kennen can harass him out of lane. Kennen can take really, really good fights against Kled. Maybe not if the Kled goes the new Sunfire build that's been going around. That's been a new build. But for the most part, I have an easy time into Kled. Our next up is the flavor of the month pick. You've seen it likely in your solo queue games. It's Lee Sin. You have to really watch yourself against Lee Sin. It's slightly Lee Sin favored. I wouldn't say it's a skill matchup, nor would it be too bad for Kennen, since he does have all the tools to scale up, play safe in lane, and set up for ganks against Lee Sin. That's the biggest thing. If you can outscale Lee Sin and not die to him in lane, that is Lee Sin's worst nightmare, in my opinion. I usually take Conqueror. You have to watch out for his level 1 cheese, and you have to space really well outside of his Q and outside of his ward hop range. He's probably going to max E, shove you in, but you won't have that too hard of a time if you just play for your team and scale up. Alright, next we got Lucian. Same as the other AD carry, Kalista. You gotta scale up. You gotta just hold your ground levels 1 through 5. Wait till level 6 rolls around and you'll be fine. Take Doran's shield, take Phaedrus or Electrocute. You'll win lane post 6, but be sure to not die in that time frame. Now this next one I feel like a lot of you would be putting down in here, and I would maybe agree if Irelia and Jayce weren't so bad. Like, Malphite's definitely the closest I can get to very hard without being put in the same tier as Jayce and Irelia, just due to how much he has going for him in this lane. He has good sustain with his shield. Not really sustain, but he out-tanks all of your sustain, or all of your damage with his shield. You don't have sustain. You have to take Doran's shield, like double MR runes, nullifying orb, and he's just gonna press Q on you off cooldown. But overall, I think you can scale it out and hold on. You can play for ganks really well, you can set up ganks for your jungler really well, but you're going to have a bad time. If he ever gets some AP, you're going to be taking massive damage from each Q. Biggest thing about Malphite is, if he takes Comet, use your E to dodge the Comet. I know it doesn't give any resistances anymore, but that is a big thing to do in this matchup if the Malphite is taking Comet. Personally, I would take Phaedrus or Conqueror into Malphite, just due to Phaedrus' scaling and Conqueror's brawling abilities. If the Malphite is going AP, you do have a chance to kill him, but it's not. Alright, next up on the list, we got Maokai. It's a hard matchup. He goes in the tank category with Cho'Gath, Dr. Mundo, Malphite, and himself. Tanks are it used to be a good matchup for Kennen when he had resistances on his E and Kleptomancy, but now that those are both gone, it's become really a pretty bad lane, honestly. Maokai is going to outscale you. He's going to out-tank all of your damage. He has so much sustain, so much damage just on his base kit. He doesn't have to build damage to one-shot. You're really just going to be looking to scale up, farming up, TP bot lane, play for your team. You're not going to kill him. Just scale up and pray that your team does not get too far behind. Next up is Mordekaiser. I would maybe put him here, but I feel like Mordekaiser is a bit more winnable than most of these other champions. Mordekaiser, for the most part, you can farm up. You're gonna play a little bit of a weak side game. Not really much kill pressure. You can farm up. Have kind of pretty good ganks against Mordekaiser. You can set up ganks for your jungler really well. You have to make sure you stay healthy though, because if he does take that 1v2 and ult you have to make sure you can survive in the death realm for your jungler to help you. But for the most part, you're going to be scaling up. He has pretty okay sustain, pretty good wave clear. He's going to shove you in, but you can play for your team later. NASUS. This is probably the most controversial one on this list. I would put NASUS in the skill matchup, but not for any other reasons for these other three champions. NASUS is a skill matchup. It's an even matchup because it is completely jungle dependent. If you get help against NASUS, it is such a Kennen favored matchup. If you get any sort of help against NASUS, he should be 0-4 before his turret falls. You should really be bullying a NASUS if you're getting help from your jungler. But on the opposite side of that, if NASUS gets any sort of help, or you and him both get zero help, he's gonna out sustain you, out farm you, out lane you, outside lane you. He's going to be a menace to deal with later on. But if your jungler helps, NASUS is one of the easiest matchups in the world. I would recommend taking Phase Rush against him just due to his wither. Even though late game it is on like a 4 or 5 second cooldown and it's really hard to escape. The Phase Rush is going to help you farm up if your jungler doesn't play for you, scale up, and be overall safe in laning. Alright, next up is Neeko. We got Neeko. She goes into really hard to place her between these two. She's not that bad of a matchup. You do out teamfight her in a sense. You're such an easier champion to play than her, but she will out lane you. She out pokes you, she out pushes you. Maybe an area or a spellbook angle with most Neekos. You're better in teamfights just slightly, but she will have the edge in lane. I would recommend taking area and spellbook against her with MR runes. You'll be fine if you play for bot lane. Alright, with Ornn, he maybe goes in one of these tiers. He has a little less kill pressure than most of the other tanks, despite what many people would expect. I feel like he's one of the easier tank matchups. Though he will be giving his team free gold later down the line, I don't think it's that hazardous of a matchup. You can take Spellbook or Phase Rush, scale up and play for jungle ganks or play for your team, play for teleporting bot lane against Ornn. It's really not that big of a deal if you're against Ornn. It's one of the more common matchups for me personally. I feel like it's not too bad if you're looking to scale up and play for your team. And next up, Pantheon, I feel, is actually a good matchup for Kennen. Maybe not as good as some of these other ones, but maybe as good as Gwen. Just due to, it's similar to Jax where you have many tools to shut him down if he ever jumps onto you. If he jumps onto you, you can just press E, QW, run away, kite back, or just walk away in general. Pantheon really has a really limited range to deal with. And if you ever messes up one of his combos, you can just kite him to death. You can walk forward, you can kite him in his wave, and it's really, really good for Kennen. The only thing you have to watch out for is if he has 5 stacks, you need to walk away from the wave or walk away from him. Do not get hit by that 5 stack stun. I would recommend taking Conqueror, since you really can have some kill pressure against him. You can poke him down. He doesn't have any sustain in lane. He's going to probably take Corrupting Pot just because he has no sustain in lane. You can max Q, rush Zonias, and you will be fine against Pantheon. Poppy, one of the first, maybe one of the only 7-3 matchups. I feel like it's one of the easiest matchups, if not the easiest matchup in the game for Kennen. Poppy has nothing, absolutely nothing to deal with Kennen aside from her R in teamfight. Really, really hard for Poppy to play the lane. You can take Conquer, you can shove her in, you can get cheater recalls, you can play for your jungler. You have so many things to deal with Poppy. She really can't kill you. You have to royally mess up the lane to die to Poppy. You just take Conqueror, shove her in off cooldown, auto attack her off cooldown, and you will be A-okay. Alright, for Quinn, I think she is actually a skill matchup. Just due to how Quinn has to play the lane, she has to get up in your face with her tumble. If you can react to her tumble with your E, QW, get a really good electrocute or phase rush trade or proc on her, you'll have a really good time. Level 6 is like most AD carries, you can just flash on her. Or if she's stupid enough to walk into you, you can just press R. She'll die instantly. But early game, levels 1 through 5, if she takes Ignite and you don't respect that, she can snowball the lane. Just have to ping every single time she's out of vision. You have to ping her. You have to make sure she doesn't snowball mid lane or bot lane or she's ulting somewhere else. You have to be vigilant about making sure you know where she's at. Right, up next is Renekton. I think he's a skill matchup. I think he's one of the epitome of skill matchups like Camille, Illaoi. I think he is one of the biggest skill matchups Kennen has. Maybe slightly Renekton favored due to how much kill pressure he has on you. But Kennen has many of the tools needed to deal with Renekton, similar to Jax and Pantheon. If he ever jumps on you, you have really good way to get away. With Phase Rush, you can even take Conqueror and contest most of his pushes, contest most of his trades. You can auto him down, harass him down really well. I feel like it's maybe even Kennen favored, though I have seen some high elo Renektons absolutely dumpster Kennen. Next up, we got Rengar. I would honestly, it really depends on the Rengar player, but I feel like I've won it more times than I've lost it. You can just stun and run, man. Rengar really doesn't have much to do against Kennen. You can farm from range with your Q. Anytime he jumps onto you, you just proc Phase Rush or proc Grasp, which is what I've been going usually against Rengar. Keep Grasp procs up, and every time he jumps onto you, proc it, take Bone Plating, you'll be fine. You can even Zone Use Rush into his matchup, and you will be fine. For me, I usually take Grasp with Bone Plating and play super far back. You need to play super far back and farm with your Q. If he does waste his Ferocity on the wave, you can take really good trades against him, but overall, you need to play it safe, but you will outscale him, and you can outtrade him if you play the lane. Next up is Riven. I feel like she is one of the easiest matchups for Kennen, just due to how Kennen can play the lane. He can outspace Riven. He can really just completely make Riven feel like a child, man. It's like Jax, similar to Jax. Anytime she wants to walk forward, you can just E backwards, completely stop her trade, completely stop her engage, and then just kite forward with your auto attacks. She'll be really unhappy during most of it. You can max Q, you can max W, you can take basically any rune you want. I personally take Conquer against her. You can hard bully her, push her in level 1, push her in level 2, cheat a recall, get an extra AD item, and you will be fine against Riven. Alright, next up we got Rumble. I feel like it's similar to Malphite, where it's so close to being down here, just due to how strong Rumble is, but my heart tells me to put him into 4-6. He's slightly Rumble favored. Maybe I've lost it more times than I've won it overall. Just due to what Rumble can do. He has a shield. Anytime he sees your Q, he can just react to it with his shield. He can out-sustain you, out-push you. His ult's really good in team fights. It rivals yours. One of the only team fight ultimates in the game that rivals Kennen's. He'll shove you in. He can play for dives. He can play for his jungler. Really difficult matchup against Rumble. I recommend taking Phase Rush with Nullifying Orb and just playing safe, scaling up, and teleporting bot lane. Such like Rumble and Malphite, I love to put him down here, but Ryze is such a bad champion right now, I feel like it'd be unfair to put him in 3-7. Typically, when Ryze is in the meta, he can outpush you, outtrade you, outsustain you even with stuff like Ravenous Hunter. But for now, I'm taking Phase Rush, maybe a Spellbook against Ryze. Not much you can really do. You don't have much agency in the lane, but you can play for your bot lane, you can scale up, and that's mostly what you're going to be looking to do against Ryze. Set. I feel like he is so close to being here with Darius and Garen, but due to it's less lethal if you get hit by a Set E than a Darius E. Like, he's not going to one-shot you like a Darius will. Usually sets don't take Ghost, but they do take Fleet Footwork. Maybe they'll take Ignite. I feel like Kennen has a lot of the tools needed to deal with Set. He's even, I would say, a vacuum counter to Set in pro play, especially. Pro play and like really high elo solo queue. Kennen can be picked into Set to just scale him out, wall him. Don't ever let him get killed. Set wants to snowball. Set doesn't scale that well. Kennen can do pretty well into him. Set really doesn't do that well into Kennen. Just due to Kennen's scaling, Kennen's safety in lane. You can really just harass him early, push him in, get a cheater recall maybe. Similar to Shen, which I'll talk about right now. Shen is an easy matchup. He's probably up here with Poppy, but due to how easy it is to mess up the lane for Kennen, I have to put him down here with the others. But he's definitely a Kennen favorite matchup. You can take Conquer, you can push him in. I even have a video on my channel recently that I put up against how to win any game against Shen in the first 4 minutes. You just shove him in, cheater recall, play for your team, you'll be fine. Anytime he walks into fog, you'll need to chase him just to make sure he's not ulting into your team. And if you can catch him ulting, you can stun him easily, stop him from teleporting to his team, and then even maybe one-shot him depending on how ahead or behind he is. But I think it's definitely one of Kennen's best matchups. Speaking of one of Kennen's best matchups, I think Singed is absolutely unlosable for Kennen. Singed has nothing he can do against Kennen. Kennen outpushes him early game. Not mid-game or late game, but early game in lane. Specifically in lane, Kennen is really good into Singed. You take Conqueror, you can auto him off cooldown, drive on the wave even. He's really mana hungry. Just make sure he doesn't get an early recall and you will be fine. Anytime he tries to flip you can just ult, EQW, Phase Rush away. Maybe you can take Conqueror. I've been bouncing between the two, but it really honestly does not matter what you take against Singed. It's such a good matchup for Kennen. Next up, this one, I really go back and forth between so many times. So often do I feel like Sion's either up here or down here. That's why I'm gonna put him in skill matchup, just because he's not like that unkillable. You can go AD, you can go like Bork, Kraken Slayer, or even Riftmaker into Sion. Pretty good into him, but he has a lot of ways to kill you, so he's maybe down here. A lot of ways to kill you, just since if he hits a fully charged Q, or maybe he E's a minion into you, slows you, and then just rushes you down with his ultimate and Q. He can kill you even while building tank. But overall, I feel like Kennen can really scale the lane out better than most other champions could. Set up ganks really well too, you can farm up. Kennen's really flexible into Sion. Pretty easy lane to scale out. Pretty hard lane. Sylas, maybe second in command to the controversial takes. I think Sylas is actually a Kennen favored matchup in lane specifically. In lane specifically, you can take Conqueror, you can bully him. Sylas has one of the lowest, if not the lowest base health in the game, level 1. He has 525. I think he's tied with Sona, one of the lowest healths in the game. Yeah, Sylas is a pretty good matchup for Kennen. You can rush Orb, take Conqueror, you can really bully him early on. But mid and late game is where the problem strikes. Wherever he takes your ultimate, he uses it better than you, he out-sustains, he's an absolute unkillable monster. But in lane, I feel like you can rush Oblivion Orb and you'll be fine. You can take Conqueror or Phase Rush, either one. A lot of like mid elo players will run against a few Tahm Kenches, which I feel is in the same realm as all of these other tanks with Cho'Gath, Dr. Mundo, Malphite, Maokai. He's really, really unkillable. You can scale up, yes. If he hits you with one of his Qs, slows you, maybe eats you like once or twice, you're just dead. Absolutely blown up, but you can scale up the matchup, similar to these other tanks in this hard lane tier. Next up is Teemo. Teemo, I feel like, is one of the most skill matchups in the game for Kennen. Similar to Camille, similar to Renekton, similar to Illaoi. Just due to how Kennen and Teemo both have to play the lane to lose it for themselves. It's a really snowball heavy lane. Probably won it maybe a bit more than I've lost it, so maybe it could go up here. But I feel like for the most part, Teemo's a skill matchup. You can play safe early game, go Door and Shield for sure, because his poison will proc it. You can just keep healing over and over and over from the Door and Shield passive. Level 6, you just one-shot him, just like every other ranged champ, like Kalista, Lucian, you know, Rise even, Neeko, Heimerdinger. Level 6 you win, but you have to play super safe early on. Taking Phase Rush maybe, Electrocute I've heard some people take, with Nullifying Orb and you'll be fine. Right up next we got Tryndamere. Probably one of the hardest matchups to win in mid and low elo. Just due to how easy Tryndamere is to play and how Kennen has to play it to not lose. Feels like a zone use rush game most of the time where you're just looking to not get dove. I would absolutely 100% recommend, if you ever play against Tryndamere, get a stopwatch your first recall. Your first recall, get a stopwatch. They never expect it. They'll always dive you, and you can get first blood that way against Tryndamere. But overall, I think it's a hard matchup just because Tryndamere has so much sustain, so much shoving power. He can out-sustain all of your damage, shove you in, tower dive you even. But if you go stopwatch and zone use rush, I think you can scale it out pretty well. Urgot's similar to Aatrox kind of, where you can pretty much outrange him. It's a skill matchup, I feel, for the most part. Maybe slightly Urgot winning, just due to how much easier Urgot is to win the lane. But I feel like a good Kennen and a good Urgot will for the most part go blow for blow. You can outrange him, outscale him even. But he can have a really, really easy time one-shotting you if he hits his ult or he hits his E-flash. I'd say you can take Phase Rush or Conqueror into him, maybe Cole, scale up the lane, maybe Cheater into Cole if you can get an early push. For the most part, I feel it's a skill matchup. Classic lane, Victor, absolutely hate it. It's probably with Rise, as close to very hard as I can put it without being in Jayce and Irelia tier. Just due to how much he has going for him. He has so much better wave clear than you. He has almost equal team fighting and late game scaling, maybe even more scaling, but not as good team fighting. In lane, he'll just harass you down so much. It's so hard to play against a good Victor. Shoves you in, harasses you through his wave, has a shield to stop all of your harassment. It's such an insufferable matchup. It's so hard to win against Victor. You can do it, and I feel like it's easier mid lane than top lane. As for top lane Victor, I feel like it's one of his hardest matchups. Same goes for Vladimir. Vladimir is pretty much a soft counter to Kennen. I feel like I cringe every time I see Vladimir locked in, man. He's such a hard lane to win. You can go Spellbook maybe and like take Ignite level 6. For the most part, Vladimir is a pretty hard matchup for Kennen. He out-sustains you, outpushes you, outscales you even. He's equal or greater than Kennen in team fights, just due to how much damage he can pump out if he gets ahead. For me, I usually take Phase Rush, maybe Spellbook to get some sort of level 6 cheese with Ignite on him, but you will be shoved in, you're going to be poked down, you're going to be out-sustained. Pretty hard matchup for Kennen to win. Next up, Volibear, I feel like is in the Darius, Ornn tier here. It's kind of winning for Volibear. Not too hard, not too difficult, but you're not going to be doing any flashy solo queue plays. He can scale up, you can scale up. It's pretty even. Maybe Volibear favor just due to how easy he can dive you level 6. He builds tanky, one-shots you, but you can scale it out if you play it right. All you have to do really is watch for his speed up, E backwards, and you'll be fine. Warwick's one uncommon matchup, but I put it on here just due to how much I've played against it personally, and I feel like it's a really, really easy matchup for Kennen. You just auto him off repeat. He can't really out-sustain you, contrary to what you might believe. From what I've played against Warwick, it's always been an easy matchup. You can rush Oblivion Orb now, that's a thing. Really, really easy matchup. Push him in early, get a good cheater, get a good tempo lead on him. Maybe go Cole even early. You can take Conqueror, you can take Phase Rush. It's really up to you. Warwick's an easy match. Speaking of easy matchups, Wukong is probably one of his easiest. As close to putting in 7-3 as I can without putting it completely there. At the top of easy matchups for Kennen, just due to how much Kennen has going for him. Similar to Jax, similar to Riven, similar to Pantheon. If he ever dashes onto you, you just press all of your buttons. You can either one-shot him or disengage really easily. You can take Conqueror or Phase Rush. A lot of different ways to play against Wukong, but you have to be careful about his level 6 if you ever get low. This one might upset a few people, mainly Yasuo mains, but I feel like it's the easiest matchup in the game for Kennen, man. It is actually the easiest matchup of the game. It's so unplayable for Yasuo, man. Kennen versus Yasuo is one of the easiest matchups you can play. He can't really engage onto you just because you can E, auto, Q, W. Anytime he gets near you, you just full combo him to death. Really hard for Yasuo to play. He can't do anything against Kennen. You can shove him in early, take Conqueror, harass him down. You can even look for dives. It's so one-sided to Kennen, it's not even funny. Alright, next up we got Vayne. It's in the 80 carry tier list. Same points that I pointed out for Lucian and Kalista. Play safe, free 6, you'll be fine, level 6. One-shotter, you'll have a good time. It might just be a personal bias, but I feel like I never win lane against Yorick, man. It's so hard to win lane against Yorick. He has so much more sustain than you, so much more pressure than you, so much more pushing than you. He has so much going for him. If you ever get hit by his circle, you're stuck in there for like 3-4 seconds until your 0.6 attack speed breaks you out. Such a hard lane to win. He can take phase rush and maybe even spellbook, but he can kill you on repeat if he ever gets a kill. It's so hard. And last but not least, Yone. I feel like he's just Yasuo 2.0. I would put him higher if he wasn't such a strong champion right now. But I feel like he can go zone use rush against most Yones, and you can make him cry, you can make him cringe. Maybe he's slightly favored to Kennen. I'll put him up here with Silas set. You can push him in early, get good tempo, get a cheater recall on him, play for your team. He'll be a little bit unhappy. For the most part, I feel like Yone's such a strong champion right now that it's hard to put him any higher than that. But that's all just my opinion. This is just my tier list, but I feel like this is a pretty good guideline if you're looking to get into Kennen. You can look which matchups are hard, which matchups are difficult, what do I have to look to beat these certain matchups. If you want me to go into more detail for any of these, please ask in the comments below. I will be glad to answer any questions about any of these matchups, and maybe in the future I will make a video on them specifically. But for now, that was just my opinion. That was just my tier list. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you later.